I recently spoke to a research scientist from Lupin, and they sort of had a team of 50 to 60 people, just the compliance team. Uh, and I mean, it's natural that they have junior regulatory affairs guys. So, what do you think? Where can a junior guy safely use AI, which is like that one document that can be safely outsourced to, let's say, Claude or any other AI?
It depends on the role that they have. But for instance, if it was something like post-market surveillance where they're looking for information or trying to find best ways to present information, they can use AI to do that. Basically they're taking input data and they're saying, how can I present this the best way? And and companies will have standard outputs. They will have, this is the way we do this report. This is how we work. So a junior role can easily say, okay, I'm going to do this, and this is how I'm going to use AI to help me on my way. If the company allow me, we have to be aware that if you don't have enterprise AI, it's not a very secure situation to be putting any company documents or any information into the system. So you really need to have your company really needs to subscribe to enterprise grade Copilot, Claude, or GPT, or Gemini. They all have enterprise
Right.
solutions where you're basically working in a company sandbox and you're not sharing your documentation to the general knowledge base to the outside world. But otherwise, you need to really, you need to say, well, where is this useful to me? I mean, I have tasks where, why did I ever bother with AI? It's actually taken me longer to do this than if I'd just done it myself, sort of thing. So there are situations where it's not so efficient.
And
Yeah.
you've been, I mean, we've spoken a lot on using AI skills, and just to dial back on that, I think you also recently posted the part four of your governance series,
Yes.
right? And it spoke about the AI skills. So, for someone who isn't, from this whole entire AI space, someone who's new to this, how is a skill fundamentally different from just prompting an LLM? Like you said, having a persona and other stuff.
So if you think we can take it very easily, if we say we make a prompt, if I prompt something, then it depends on what I prompt and what I get out. If I have, if you've ever used a chat system and you always go back to your same chat because you've developed this chat and it's got more and more refined, and then one day you put the wrong information in that chat, you've now contaminated it, right?
Right.
So what does an AI skill do? It puts the engine of your super prompt, of your super refined prompt, in a revision controlled environment. So you can have revision one, revision two, revision three, but it's not any longer dynamic. You're always using the same skill to go back to. Part four, I showed you how to build an intended use
Intended use case.
skill.
Yeah.
Part five, I will show you how to orchestrate, how to launch that skill, to automatically get it from a repository and get your intended use statement out of the repository automatically.
Wow. That's. I think it even it evolves to multi-agent orchestration type of system.
Yes, so if we look at the example I use is one paragraph, and when you look at the prompt, you might say, well, why did I bother? I could have written this one paragraph. But the reality of it is that that one paragraph could be a complete validation plan. It could have been a 50-page document and not one paragraph. But in order for people to understand and communicate, this is how it works, and this is how you have to structure it and set it up. We have to start small, and
Right.
and then people can understand it. It would not be useful to give people a 50-page output. They probably wouldn't bother.
They probably get scared
Yeah.
at first, like 50 pages output.
Yes.
Also,
Yeah.
I think you spoke about seven different layers in the same post. Can you walk
Yes.
me through those seven layers and what actually happens in each layer?
Right. So we have, we can say we have a various models that we have to work with here. But if we look at our basic architecture, we have a repository, so a storage space, which is revision controlled storage space. I call it our immutable knowledge base, but it has more than just knowledge in it. It might have standards, it might have SOPs, it might have regulations, whatever you put there that doesn't change or only changes under revision control. And then I have my functional AI execution layer. That is where my execution is really taking place. This is equivalent, if you like, at the very simple, I put a prompt into the system and I get an answer back. That is my functional execution layer. It's just using general knowledge. And then, but I want to become much more focused and constrained. So then I have a risk evaluation and assessment layer. So based on my output, I want to do risk evaluation and assessment of whatever I've executed. I want to check that execution. And then the next section is like the deterministic, the governance layer. It's saying, is this output what I really want? And if it isn't, then send it back to my functional execution because something needs to be fixed. And it can go round that loop several times, but because we're looking at computer systems, they're going to run very, very quickly. And
Right.
then I'm going to be looking at my controlled output, which is basically my almost ready to use document or my ready to edit document is probably the way we should phrase it. So that's how those layers work together. And in part 5, I introduced and that's not gone out yet, but I introduced the orchestrated layer or an orchestrated block, which sits next to the knowledge base. They're very close. They're in the same repository, effectively. One piece has the role of logical execution, whereas the other piece has the role of reference knowledge.
Wow. And
Yeah.
to tie it back to like you said, humans, they only learn after something disastrous has happened. So was there any specific failure that you've seen where it prompted you to s- move to sort of AI skills and move away from just simply prompting?
No, my drive behind AI skills, my motivation was to create, or the driver that drove me to this architecture is I had worked with AI skills previously on an ad hoc basis. When I needed an AI skill, I wrote one. And I was at the point where how I want to create a digital twin of a QMS. So I want basically an automated QMS that monitors my QMS, and when there's an input, that it says, oh, this input is correct or not. And to do that, I needed a building block. And I realized when I was looking at that, because LLMs are one-way filter, open loop, I need to be able to automate that. And then when I start looking at the elements that I need, I come up with this architecture. And when I speak to two other people at the time in different places of the world who are also working with skills, they're actually working with the skills in the same way.
Wow.
So, and so this is no longer I mean, we can say it's already a best practice approach because it's almost the only way available for people to work today. But personally, I view that it should be a standardized approach. People should define this as a standardized approach to work with open loop AI systems in order to turn them into closed loop governed systems.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to the guardrails that we apply to it.
Yes, yes.
Also, I think we spoke about a Hooden, Medboard, Regdesk, and Freer as well. And you've been building your own sort of tools in the RAQA actionable AI. So, what did you see in the existing tools? What was lacking in them that you had to, build your own sort of systems and, adopt to the emerging technology?
So I ran into a problem with the regulatory roundup that I wanted a. So in the regulatory roundup, I do a weekly PDF to download. I do a daily. Now I do a daily update. It all started with a weekly roundup, and then it moved to it's moved to a daily. But one of the issues was with the weekly update, I used to put them together into 3 months compendium, and now I put them into 1 month compendiums because even over a 1 month compendium is over 100 pages long. And so what I realized is I couldn't create a 1 year compendium because LinkedIn didn't let me have X thousand pages PDF. And anyway, this isn't manageable, right? I could download the PDF, and search it, but it's not manageable. So I created the index of indexes, and at the very beginning, the index of indexes was just based on the regulatory roundup. But then I started tracking the posts in the QARA group and adding them as well.
Right.
So now we have the index of indexes, which covers basically all the posts, content of value posts that appear in the QARA group. So the next, so where did I come up with the standards? Well, I need to be able to search standards and guidance. And I don't want to have to go on the web page of FDA and then search for another web page somewhere else and another web page somewhere else. So I just took the same architecture that I had for my roundup and took it across to my standard selector. So there is no it's just an updated, we can say it's just an updated database of standards guidances. And it doesn't compete with anybody. I mean, they might think so, but I don't think so. Um, um, I don't see any value in charging anybody for data that is readily available. I don't provide any data there that is not available somewhere public domain.
Publicly.
So, so all I do is make it easier for people to find stuff, right? Whereas if you go to Medboard, they will help you formulate and actually address some of your regulatory issues. So you're outsourcing some of your regulatory processes. And the same applies to Regdesk. If you go to Hoodin, they are much more regulations focused. So they'll be keeping you updated with the latest. If you set up your profile for a set of regulations, then they will keep you updated with any of those regulations change and how they will impact your product. And you have to work out how they impact your product. So, all these players, they have different ways of addressing the market. And my approach is very selfish. It's like, I need these tools anyway, so why don't I share them?
You just
So,
create and share them with everybody.
Right, because I can't, you know, my business is not making tools. You know, my business is providing regulatory and quality support. So if I need tools to do that, then I make them. And I mean, I've had situations where, you know, if you look at a document set and you see companies reference the standards in the document, and then you see the standards are not always referenced the same way, then you've got to search through the document and make sure you get a uniform referencing of the standard in the document. And then sometimes it's just quicker when there's like 50 documents to check to write a script to do that.
I think in your last regulatory roundup, which was released, I think Friday or Saturday, uh, you said the main signal was pilots. It was like across every
Yes,
industry.
yes,
And you also said that pilots aren't just standalone, they're like a part of a bigger, a broader shift.
yes.
So, what do you see, what do you think is like actually happening in these regulators?
So the regulators, so what was very interesting last week was a number of regulators all launching pilots at the same time, in the same week. But why do you have pilots? You have pilots in order to test your legislation. So if you're not sure how the community is going to act, and you want more feedback about the problems that the industry is facing with a specific product area, then you launch a pilot. And then that's a way to collect information and then finalize. And then then you would launch a consultation after that. You'd announce your pilot results. Then you launch a consultation for your new guidance or your new regulation. And then you release that. So it's part of the regulatory body process to run a pilot in order to collect additional information before moving towards legislation.
Speaking about, I think, legislation, you also mentioned that uh, the first time submissions, they are becoming very critical. Uh,
Yes.
how does that translate into practice for, let's say, a manufacturer?
So we could say first time submissions have to be more critical because 50% of them are incorrect or incomplete. So, how does that impact a manufacturer? Do your submissions right. Make sure they're complete and correct. So, this is one of the consequences of using AI to screen submissions because you can find out much more quickly as if something's incomplete or incorrect. So why aren't manufacturers doing that? They should. Manufacturers should be writing, and this is the whole thing. Is is AI going to create less work? No, it can
More work.
create more work or the same amount of work because I now have more time and I have a smaller excuse for not submitting complete and correct
Right.
documentation.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I meant, like, you mentioned a lot of these regulatory bodies in that post of yours of regulatory roundup. Which regulatory body are you watching closely right now?
So I'm always watching the FDA and the EMA. So EMA, you'll get more pharma information in general, but that's just because of the way the system in Europe operates. FDA is because it's a centralized organization. You're getting device and pharma information all the time, so that's good. But I'm basically watching. My morning scan is uh, FDA, EMA, TGA, so that's Australia, CDS, CO,
That's India.
um, Singapore, New Zealand.
Wow.
I have a long list that I go through that I check out.
There are the
Um,
specifics.
World Health Organization. if you look, I have a fair concentration of where the news is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And we can see that when news is coming out of Latin America or Africa, that it's usually following, or even if we look at Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Malaysia, they tend to follow what's going on. Another country I watch a lot is Egypt because there are big things happening there and they have a lot of reform going on. So
Really?
it's very good. Yes.
How's the landscape there?
They have regular regulatory changes and updates, and they're and they're aligning with EU. They're aligning with EU and FDA requirements. And Egypt used to be a country where it took a long time to get approval for a product. So that we could say they're becoming much more harmonized with the global landscape. So so that's a very positive thing.
Wow.
I think it's very interesting to watch. Yeah.
Also, your QARA group just crossed 17,000 members. So, congratulations, first of all, for that. I saw the post yesterday. What do you think is like the most asked question in there over the last 6 months? What is the thing that QARA professionals have been asking you the most?
I think the one question there. I think the one question is always the same, and that's one reason why the QARA group was created, and that is where to find stuff, where to find the information. I think that's the key question. I think I don't think there's a single technical question that is common. We have the sort of quality and regulatory things. People want to know what the timeline is on the MDR, IVDR reforms and things like that. But the one common question is, where do I find this information? Where do I get? And that's really what the QARA group, the problem the QARA group solves. It provides a platform where people can post freely, and in general the content level is a very high level that's posted there. Yeah.
So, what are they worrying about right now? What's the number one fear that these professionals they have?
I don't think there's a I don't think there's a fear as such. I think it's so regulatory is all about navigation, and quality is all about keeping on the straight and narrow, keeping on the path, keeping on the road. And and I think the issue, really, the challenge is that traditionally quality and regulatory people have not been technically, they've been subject matter experts in their own field, but they've not been IT junkies. And so there's a level of digitalization which requires people. If we look at the whole AI skills story, it's not it's not simple. If it was simple, it wouldn't take me 6 or 7 parts to communicate that,
Right.
right? And even then, it's pushing people to their limit to learn a new skill.
Mm-hmm.
You teach people about AI skills so they can learn a new skill in using them. So so it's the I would say the big change in the last, we had 20 years where regulations didn't change in the US and in Europe. And now we've got new regulations, and now we've got continuous change. But we've also got a situation where people have to become digital. People have to digitize, and not just the
Right. The
technology.
technology.
You know, if we think we go to machine readable systems, You know, if you're a digital native, you have no problem reading JSON,
Yes.
but but your average regulatory or quality professional is not going to be able to do that, and they will not know where to find a JSON viewer even to present it in a
Normal
human
format.
readable format. Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah.
Last question, Martin. In like your entire experience of more than like 4 decades, if you had to boil it down to sort of one piece of advice for the younger viewers who are getting into compliance, what would that be?
Be passionate about what you're doing, and if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then don't do it and do something else. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
I mean, the amount of things that you've said, I mean, the passion is like very clear. It's and it's an interesting landscape, I'd say. It's a very interesting landscape. And the fact that it's changing so rapidly with all of this technology that's coming up, it's far interesting to watch.
I work on I work on a lot of projects where you meet the same situation many times, and the same situation has occurred many times for different reasons. So you're fixing the same thing, but no project is the same. And I can tell you, I have been in situations where I have said I would never want to come to this, get in this situation again. And sure enough, a few years later, I'm in that situation again for a different reason. So the the it's good to have challenges, and not one project is the same. Even if you're in one company and you have the 10th version of the same device, it will be different, and everything, and that's what makes it interesting. And you have to, what companies don't use enough is how can they use regulatory and quality to help their business grow faster and more efficient. They don't use that enough, and that it is a bit what I call a business enabler. It's a huge thing. They can use more.
Wow. Martin, thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot, and I think the people watching, people listening will definitely do. And for those who are wondering, all the links, Martin's LinkedIn profile, the community, the group link, and the RAQ Actionable AI link will be in the description below. And that's it for this episode of the Good Practice Show. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Faik Pirzadeh signing off.